Hello, everyone. My name is Marlea Nelson, Program Coordinator at the National Restaurant Association, and I would like to thank you all for participating in the webinar titled Menu Forecasts 2020 and Beyond. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few logistics for the webinar. We will take questions at the end of the presentation. You may type questions at any time using the questions window in your GoToWebinar screen. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible before we conclude. If your question is not addressed, we will follow up via email. You will receive a brief evaluation after the webinar. Please take a few minutes to provide your feedback and suggestions on topics you would like us to consider as we develop future programs. We are recording the webinar, so you will receive an email later this week with the link to view the on-demand recording and the PDF of the presentation. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenter today. Nancy Cruz is the president of the Cruz Company. She is the best known and most widely quoted menu analyst in the restaurant industry. Recently, she completed coursework at the Culinary Institute of America, where she's a frequent lecturer. In demand on the speaking circuit, she has addressed groups throughout the US and abroad. Named by LinkedIn as one of the top 100 influencers in the US, she blogs regularly on food-related topics on the LinkedIn website. Please join me in welcoming Nancy.
Thank you so much, Marley. I appreciate the introduction. Everybody stay tuned while we get ourselves into presentation mode. Here we go. I'm delighted that you've been able to join us as we take a look today at what's new, what's noteworthy on the menu. If I could, at the outset, I'd like to just sort of set the stage for you. I feel on your behalf that you are constantly, as food service operators, bombarded by information, by inputs. I'm with you because I'm in the same boat. And the challenge that I find, frankly, is to sort through the hype and the information and the constant bombardment in order to identify the foods, the flavors, the dishes and the items that will actually appeal, that will actually work for you. And that is my objective. There's going to be a good deal of material that I present today, but my overall focus has been on providing news that you can use, ideas that you can actually implement profitably in your operation that will make sense for your patrons, that will make sense for your operation. Now, as I move into my agenda, you will notice as I go through the program that I have pulled ideas from all segments of the industry. You're going to see in independent restaurants and chain restaurants and bars and schools and high schools and campuses. The fact is, as you know quite well, no single segment of our industry has a lock on innovation. There's creativity everywhere, and I've tried to pull from everywhere to present you with relevant ideas. So let's get started. You can see here that I'm going to be talking about a menu super trend, really. It is the subject of health and healthful dining. It cuts across all types of operations. It cuts across all times of the day. Here's what your patrons say. The statement is, I'm eating more food because of its specific nutritional benefits than I did 2 years ago. Let me reread that correctly. I'm eating more food because of its specific nutritional benefits than I did 2 years ago. And if you take a look in the upper right-hand quadrant, you've got a dark green bar. You have agreement, strong agreement there. If you move to the right, you've got somewhat agreement. If you come around to the bottom, you've got agreement, and put it all together, about 64% of consumers say that they are somewhat or very much in agreement with that notion, specific nutrition benefits. If that's what they say, how are you responding? Well, more and more of you are trying to cover the bases with the diet plans of the moment. Here I'm showing you Moo-Less, which is a better burger specialist, and this is their new lifestyle menu. You can see the top 3 bullets there in terms of diet options on the left really are the diet plans du jour, right? And what those 3 have in common is that they tend to be lower in carbs, higher in protein. They tend to avoid over-processed foods. There are some differences, but as generalization, that would apply. And then you see the last 2 bullets there, which are really, I think, more lifestyles and lifestyle choices than dietary regimes. Now, the last point, gluten-free. And you see the replacement of the bun in the foreground, this beautiful picture in this absolutely wonderful photogenic lettuce. Is that a real thing? Is it still a thing? And the answer is that about 11% of consumers say yes, indeed, they are committed to gluten-free dining. That's about 3 times more than the number of consumers who actually have a celiac or some other dietary restriction. So yeah, gluten-free is still trending, but for 89% of the people who are in fact consuming grains, they'd like it to be better. They like good grains, and it's not surprising as you look at this slide. Panera has jumped on that. This was an initiative that was introduced about a year ago, just less than that, last fall, in which Panera identifies on the menu the exact whole grain content. They want to avoid misleading labeling. They want to be transparent with their menu revelation. They are the first national chain to make this commitment. Now, we're talking about health trends, and we have got to, therefore, discuss one of the 2 or 3 major trends of the moment. It happens to coincide with healthful dining, and that is demand for plant-based foods, specifically meat alternatives. It's about a $200 million market at this point, but you know, in food service, it grew about 300% last year. And it seems to me, I say here, you know, the golden ticket, it can be if conditions are right for you in your operation. I mean, I think that there are a number of strategic questions to consider. What does your customer base expect? Demand is going to vary by age, by gender, by location. If you're located close to a college campus, for example, you will have higher demand, relatively speaking. You know that the major chains, and as of this last week, major supermarket chains have jumped on board. There may be some issues relative to shortages, to capacity. You also know this is more expensive typically than meat, so that will impact your menu price. I put in that 3rd bullet just because it's a pet peeve of mine. If you decide to jump into this category, practice preparation, please. The lack of animal fat here has led to a lot of sort of, hockey pucks with condiments, ladies and gentlemen. They've got to be carefully prepared. I would also urge you to be aware of the fact that we are seeing some major pushback from the animal protein producers. Of course, that's not surprising. They're filing truth in advertising lawsuits. But more specifically from dietitians and nutritionists who are warning that these alternatives can be heavily processed, they contain additives, there may be higher sodium levels. So the bottom line here, and I'm going to make this point repeatedly, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. If you'd like to give this a try, you may want to think of it in terms of a special or an LTO, a limited time offer. On the other hand, many of you may want to sort of spiff up and re-promote your existing vegetable-based options, whether they're salads or sandwiches with vegetables as a star. All right, here is another hot category, and it's a directly related node. This is really the liquid equivalent, if you like. We've taken the cow out of the milk now. Non-dairy milk sales jumped about 60% last year for the same reasons that we're seeing plant-based meat alternatives. They are perceived as being more healthful, and they are also believed to have superior environmental benefits. Again, yeah, we're seeing some pushback here, but this category has a lot of forward momentum. So here is oat milk, which has been the star, the breakout star, leading to some shortages in the past few months. Here's cashew milk, and on the right, chickpea-based ice cream as a vegan alternative. Again, should you offer? Depends entirely on your customer base. If you do have demand from vegan diners, this could offer you an attractive kind of marketing hook or opportunity. Okay, so we're talking about healthful dining, and I've got to, acknowledge and really congratulate all of you. The last few years have seen an absolute renaissance in terms of the preparation and treatment of vegetables. You've done just a wonderful job of making them attractive, whether it's carrots or broccoli or cauliflower, which has been the breakout menu hero. Who would have predicted that, right? My headline is really rhetorical. The cauliflower certainly has not lost its mojo. But it was interesting to me that when we moved into 2019, the New York Times forecasted that mushrooms would be the it vegetable of the year. I started digging around. It turns out, interestingly enough, mushroom consumption still tends to skew heavily towards in-home dining, which certainly means there's opportunity for you. But I think more importantly, and what caught the attention of the New York Times, was what's represented on the far left on this slide. The mushroom industry has been working with the Culinary Institute of America and other major players to put a big push behind what's called the Blended Burger Project, in which a certain percentage of the meat in the patty is replaced with mushrooms. And you see that here, it's 25% at Sonic Drive-Ins. But I think a bigger driver here, frankly, has been your own culinary creativity. I mean, in the middle, we're taking a look at a meatless option. Mushrooms, of course, why not in chili? They have that same sort of savory umami characteristic that you would get from meat. The far right, I love this. Creative bar programs, my goodness. Here we've got a double header, mushroom juice and a mushroom garnish. These are actually candied mushroom slices. So I think the takeaway here, particularly on the subject of mushrooms, lots and lots of opportunity, a long runway in front of you, beyond pizza, beyond pasta, beyond salad. All right, I'm going to move away from the subject of healthful dining with something that is unequivocally not helpful. And I put this in here because it is a fact of life for all of you on this call. This is the key challenge, right? On the one hand, your patrons are absolutely demanding healthful dishes. On the other hand, boy, they love over-the-top indulgence, and they reward you for it. This dish, this zany spaghetti sandwich, it is carbs-orama, folks. It's buzzy, it's fun, it's Instagrammable, it is diet rules going right out the window. There are a number of these, by the way, spaghetti sandwiches, young chefs suggesting that they're trying to recreate a childhood favorite. I'm not familiar. It wasn't, I guess, a favorite in my childhood. But be aware, as I know that you are, just another example of what I'm calling here the dining law of physics, the equal and opposite and sometimes greater reaction on the part of your patrons. All right, So we've taken a look at Healthful. Let's move on to the world of ethnic cuisines, and specifically those of Asia, rich in opportunities for specials and add-ons and limited time offers. The growth drivers here have been in place for some time, and they really haven't changed. Globalization, certainly, and not just in the political sense, but the globalization of your pantries. Immigration trends starting back in the 1960s and coming forward in time. Geopolitics reflected on menu direction as well. But importantly, as you take a look at this slide, the rich, varied national and regional cuisines of Asian countries come into play as well. You're looking at the 6 leading Asian cuisines on U.S. menus. And in this case, I might direct you to the far right. That might make it a little bit easier to sort through the data, because what you're seeing in the blue bars are consumers who say they don't like or they won't try the cuisines in question. Look at the low numbers there. This again suggests to me lots of upside opportunity for growth, and it allows me to segue to one of my absolutely favorite slides in the program. One of your time-tested means of introducing new foods to your patrons: put it on a burger, right? The American diners will eat almost anything if you put it on top of a burger. That's Nancy's rule of menu introduction 101. 102 is put it on a bed of pasta, right? But here I'm showing you burgers, and starting on the left, I get a kick out of this, Kimchee. This is a Korean inflected burger. And Plan Check made its kimchi out of a combination of processed cheese and kimchi. In the middle, there's been a bit of a bubble with ramen burgers, specifically those made from ramen noodle cakes that is used as a bun. This is largely playing out on the independent side, but here I'm showing you an LTO, a limited time offer from a chain. And then on the right, General Tso, a Chinese staple. I'm going to talk more about General Tso in just a few slides, but if we could, let's start with Korean and Korean trends, because this has really been the breakout opportunity for many of you over the last few years. And of course, you know now that kimchi is fundamental. It's one of the building blocks of Korean cuisine. It is fermented, typically fermented vegetables. So in Chicago, we've got a new age deli that did a Reuben, made, by the way, with pastrami based on Wagyu beef, which is 21st century and upmarket for sure. But the takeaway here is the house-made dill kimchi, which was made in honor of the owner's sister-in-law. And on the right, I happen to be based in Atlanta. This operation is rather near me. It's a very trendy Korean tapas place. And look how they've mashed up now Mexican street food, which is elote, the street corn, with the classic French mayo-based sauce, the remoulade, to which they have added kimchi. And here, talking about Korean crossover, gochujang, just as ubiquitous as kimchi on Korean menus. Now we're talking about a chili-based condiment. It really does bring the heat, and that's why on the left-hand side, it makes perfect sense that the gochujang in the Bibimbap is balanced by aioli, right? It's fatty. It balances and offsets some of the burn on the right-hand side. You can just make out, I think, this dish was served with a generous helping of avocado. Again, the fat serving to ameliorate, to balance the burn. By the way, before we leave this, just for your information, gochujang has been growing at the rate of about 200% a year on menus. So it might make sense for some of you to give it a shot as well. And here, a quick observation on the notion of crossover and mainstream acceptance. You know that an item is being mainstreamed when you see it on the beverage menu. And I've been noting a number of kimchi-based cocktails. I chose this one because I think it deserves bonus points. They're using not only the kimchi brine itself, which is certainly going to make for a bracing eye-opener, but you can see they're also using the vegetables that were kimchied as a garnish. On the skewer, you see cabbage and cucumber and pickle and so on. All right, let's move on for a top-line look at Japanese crossover. Of course, Japanese food's now much better established here. It's been at least 2 and possibly closer to 3 decades since sushi took the country by storm. You know, that familiarity, that customer acceptance is what allows operators like these to experiment with a new generation of authentic but unfamiliar Japanese condiments. In this case, Togarashi. I've given you the ingredients. You see that it is chili-based, but note also that it is sweet heat. The American palate is predisposed towards anything sweet, and sweet heat naturally gives it an easier point of purchase, I guess, with your patrons. On the right, this is quite different for kake. It is fish-based, so it is funkier. It brings the umami. I deliberately, by the way, as we're going through, I have chosen mainstream restaurants like these, not ethnic specialists, just to show you that there is, I think, mainstream potential. All right. On the one hand, I just showed you these, which are emerging flavors. But, you know, on the other hand, many of you are reconsidering the better established items. You're reinventing, you're repurposing, like the Cheesecake Factory, which does a wonderful job in this regard. This is probably the 3rd wave of wasabi, right? It was introduced as a sushi condiment, and then I bet some of you on this call remember a long wave of wasabi mashed potatoes. Well, now in dressings and sauces. And I'm happy to commend to your attention a wonderful and wonderfully creative independent restaurant in Austin, Texas, the Peach Tortilla. Do take a look at their menu. It's quite innovative. But here you see they're taking miso, which was first introduced to your diners likely in soup, right? It was a soup course, and now we're seeing it move around the menu as well. Now, I'm going to leave Asia, but before I do, a couple of slides on what is really a well-loved duo of Chinese staples. First is General Tso. Last year, Bon Appetit, which I suspect many of you know is a lifestyle magazine, ran a story on the general Tsoification of menus. And the writer talked about how General Tso sauce was showing up anywhere and everywhere. I showed you a burger earlier. It's on bar nuts and beer nuts and pizza and popcorn. A couple of facts, though, relative to General Tso. He was real. He was a historic figure, a great warrior from Hunan province. He had nothing to do with sauce. The sauce is totally American made. He doesn't make and didn't make sauces, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that General Tso sauce probably can be traced to the early part of the 20th century and probably to Chinatown in New York. But I get a kick out of this. General Tso has his own Facebook page, and there's a delightful documentary movie if you're into that kind of thing. Young Chinese American culinary students searching for General Tso is the name of the movie. You might want to check it out. On the subject of Chinese American pantry staples, here is the other part of that dynamic duo. This is Kung Pao, and it turns out that Kung Pao, yeah, is actually Chinese made. It hails from the Sichuan province, and where General Tso here is generally sweet heat, Kung Pao is much more unadulterated hot with peanuts, now perhaps a little bit of that vegetable fat to do a bit of an offset. The noise level around Kung Pao has been ascending greatly over the last few months. Kung Pao carrots, Kung Pao cauliflower, and so on. The food analysts, especially those in the New York metropolitan area, are claiming that Kung Pao, because it's more authentic, because it is getting more use, is very likely the next buffalo sauce or sriracha. I don't know that I necessarily buy into that, but I do think that there is lots of potential for you to explore further use. On the right-hand side, you see this very interesting mashup of Japanese and Chinese, these attractive dragon rolls from P.F. Chang's. All right, let us move around the globe to another area that is having a great deal of influence on menu R&D in the U.S., and that is the Middle East, or more specifically the Levant. Now, the Levant generally refers to the countries that border the Mediterranean Sea on the east, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and it is the way that many food writers refer to these cuisines. I will leave it to you. My sense is that most American diners aren't familiar with the term, so you might be better advised to think in terms of using adjectives like Middle Eastern or Lebanese. But what's important here is not what I think about that. It's what's represented in the pictures. Importantly, key influencers are rising. They're coming on the scene. I'm talking about high-profile, media-friendly, talented chef advocates. I think now, as we go forward, this will be a prerequisite for crossover. They are taking their place alongside a wonderful generation of Korean American chefs who were telegenic, who were passionate, who were great culinary ambassadors. And that's certainly the case with Einat Admany on the top. She's working out of New York City. She has both full service and fast casual operations. A hero to me, Alan Shaya out of New Orleans, just tireless in his efforts post-Katrina. He kept his kitchens running. He was truly, truly a star. And the star of stars, at least from the James Beard perspective at the moment, is Michael Solomonov out of Philadelphia. Last spring, the James Beard Award for the best restaurant in the country, went to his Zahav in Philadelphia. So that's my pitch. Let me go. We're about the menu, so let me take you on to the menu. With an apology, those of you who have joined us over the last few years, I have spoken tirelessly on behalf of Chickpeas. I'm going to make you hear my pitch again. It is a staple of the Middle Eastern pantry. It is absolutely a win-win-win-win-win, nutritious, inexpensive, available, versatile, and importantly, from your patron point of view, it's very customer friendly. I have seen no research that suggests consumers anywhere at any time have been turned off by the presence of chickpeas. Here, I like this. This is from the Fort Walton Beach, Florida school district. And their high school has a regular menu of vegan options. And you see here a very attractive chickpea curry, but they also put chickpeas in salad bars, in hummus. I love this. Tacos, why not? Shepherd's pie. Obviously, what we're talking about here are savory applications. But what about this? We are now beginning to see sweet applications as well. A few slides back, I showed some chickpea ice cream. And here we have a fun, snackable kind of combination. Again, a mashup of Middle Eastern and non-Middle Eastern ingredients that is chickpea based. As I take a look at my list of ingredients running down the left, it appears that I left one out, because if you take a look at that really attractive dish with the chocolatey chickpea mixture, and you can see they've sprinkled what appear to be pistachios, another authentically Middle Eastern ingredient over the top. So chickpeas very much established, I think, at this point. Here's one coming on, less established, but lots of potential. This is Toum. It's ubiquitous throughout the Middle East, although it is Lebanese, I believe, in origin. And the word itself, Toum, is Arabic for garlic. And I chose this particular menu example because it really talks about crossover potential. This restaurant, Empeyon al Pastor, in New York City, is Mexican. They're doing an American-style fried chicken sandwich. And by the way, it is finished with Middle Eastern condiments like labneh, which is think of it as a cream cheese, and yes, the Toum. I was most interested to see this page from Better Homes and Gardens magazine. I suspect many of you know BHG. It is one of the longest running magazines in the country, targeting the so-called women's market. I mean, my grandma read it, my mother still reads it, and now the magazine is targeting millennial moms with trendy items like this. The headline said it's easy to make, it's easy to like. It certainly is all of that. You see the ingredients here, and you see how they, in the magazine, their stylists were using it as a vegetable topping. And of course, there are other condiments making their way onto American menus as well. Shug, which is Yemeni in origin, but again, found throughout, wide distribution throughout the Middle East. It is hot, and here it brings the heat at Zoe's to falafel. By contrast, on the right is za'atar. It's greener, it's brighter, it Eastern cookery say that it is the condiment king of the Middle East. It dates back to medieval times. It also strikes me that this Middle Eastern trend is giving new life to food on sticks, no matter how you spell it, kebabs. This area is, it seems to me, one of those rare opportunities where the stars align. It is truly a win-win-win. Win, is that a hat trick? I'm not sure. Showing off my ignorance of all things hockey, but lots of winners here. You operators, you get to control the ingredients used. You protein, and therefore your cost is at your discretion. But your consumers, your customers, they know this, they like it. It allows them a very sort of intimidation-free introduction to Middle Eastern foods. And importantly here, portability. Grubhub noted last spring that kebabs are one of their top 3 foods ordered for delivery. So that's a great upside opportunity for many of you. As I move away from this slide, I'd like you to direct your attention to the lower right-hand side of the plate. That will allow me to segue to a pitch for Israeli salad. Look how light, how bright, fresh vegetables, but accessible French vegetables. By the way, Israeli salad, likely Turkish in origin, and I would just, if I may step off the slide for a moment and make an observation, you know, these seemingly impenetrable political borders that crisscross the Middle East, boy, they're no match for culinary borders, which are absolutely porous, completely wide open. It's one of the things that makes the Middle Eastern culinary scene so interesting. What is likely Turkish, now largely labeled as Israeli salad, no matter how you label it. A couple thoughts. The first is, you may want to think about presenting this on your menus as Middle Eastern salsa, because it has many of the salsa ingredients, and it might be a fun hook. The other possibility is to think about using it around the clock. In the Middle East, you would typically have this beautiful fresh salad. You see it's got some feta cheese and some herbs put in front of you during breakfast. That's not necessarily an American approach, but I'm wondering if for some of you that might not be an interesting opportunity. All right, let's move now to a look ahead. What do I think is looming large in the future? And while this introductory slide says the next big thing, in fact, there are two big things that I would like to address. And the first is that I would suspect that most all of you now are beginning to see patron interest increasing in kids' foods, in your children's menus. There are very, very strong numbers driving this. The Pew Research Organization says that more than 1 million millennial moms are giving birth each year. More than 1 million millennial moms are having children each year, which means that, as you can see on the slide, by 2026, 80% of millennials will be parents. And I see that you're responding with the next bullet, because kids' menu items, in fact, have been increasing over the past few years. Now, I know I'm preaching, to the choir here, but we all know not all kids are created equal, right? What a 3-year-old wants is different from a 6-year-old, which is certainly different from a 9-year-old. And the critical factor here, it seems to me, is parental attitudes and expectations, which is why, not surprisingly, McDonald's jumped way out ahead on this. McDonald's, of course, attracting legions of kids. They need to attract parents as well. So it's been 3 years since they reformulated their chicken McNuggets. That was the first of many, many initiatives ongoing in the area of menus in general, kids menus in particular at McDonald's. Upper right here, this is just a screen grab. During the Olympics 3 summers ago, heavy TV support. And again, you see the dad there. The key point, they were going for the parents. And speaking of going for the parents, this is another one of my all-time favorite slides. This is wonderful. It's creative. It's from an independent operator in Ocean City, Maryland. And I would draw your attention to the little box that we drew around the lower left, what they call their kid friendlies. This is every parent's nightmare, right? You've got the kid in the seat and you say what you want, and oh, you want to avoid a meltdown. So they give you typical children's responses and then how they react from the menu point of view. If the kid says, I don't care, no problem. We've got a grilled peanut butter and banana sandwich with your name on it. My personal favorite is number 4. Child is saying, I don't want this, I don't want that. No problem. Put a plate of French fries in front of them. So it's a creative solution to, I think, a fairly typical kid dining dilemma. But here is a very different approach. This is a contrast. I do focus groups occasionally with the parents, and I hear them say, wait a minute, my child is a good eater. My child eats real food. We feed him or her exactly the same foods that we eat. And what that means frequently is that the parent has to order perhaps an appetizer portion to feed the child well. Here's a different approach. And this is where you take the adult items that have a proven track record and you simply size them down for a child's appetite. No matter how you approach this, I do encourage you to keep kids' menu opportunities on your radar. Going forward, they will only grow over time. All right, everybody, fasten your seatbelts. I am going to shift from kid stuff to what is very much adult stuff. This is, without question, the hottest topic in the restaurant business. I know some of you, I think probably on this call, I have been covering menus with you for decades, 2, now going on 3. I have never seen a phenomenon with the velocity. This is just unprecedented in terms of rush onto the menu. What is CBD? Stands for cannabidiol. It is hemp derived. Importantly, it is not marijuana. It does not contain THC, which is the hallucinogen or the psychogenic portion of marijuana. It is, however, CBD and marijuana, or THC, derived from the same plant, cannabis. In this case, the cannabis have been bred to produce hemp that is approved now, thanks to a farm bill passed last winter, approved for growth throughout the U.S. as textile, as a means of producing textile. In terms of using CBD in food, the U.S. government at the federal level does not allow it, although I'm told that both USDA and FDA are working on federal guidelines, but many of your states, and within your states, many municipalities have jumped the gun, and they are allowing under certain circumstances. Now, remember, CBD is a relaxant. It is not a hallucinogen. And importantly, there is absolutely no research on its effects. Until this winter, it was considered a controlled substance. So there has been no real research undertaken. Nonetheless, as you can see here, talk about a surprise, beverages are likely the initial point of entry because according to the NRA's What's Hot survey, chefs responded it was the #1 drink trend. #1. And what was number 2 on the food trend chart? Well, it was, CBD, second only to vegetable and plant-based foods. Here's an example of a food item. This is Astro Donuts. They operate both East Coast and West Coast, only available in their Santa Monica stores on the West Coast where CBD is legal. Note that they are using 60 milligrams. We have no idea. No one knows at this moment what that means in terms of how it impacts the customer and how that might vary by age, by gender, by body size, by metabolism. Does it interact with meds? We don't know. And that encourages me to encourage you to have all of us. Now let's take a step back, take a deep breath, no pun here, we're talking CBD. We've been through, all of us in the industry, many hot fads. We've seen trends come and go. And so what we've got to do is what we always do, is think strategically. I have outlined on the left a sort of starting list of considerations. What's the impact going to be if CBD and then later THC, CBD is made legal on a broad basis and we're all so relaxed and loosey-goosey? Do we go out or not go out? We don't know. There is some preliminary research from Technomic that suggests that alcohol consumption may decline as CBD consumption goes up, which leads me to, what about liability? What about if someone claims that they were so relaxed after they left your operation, I don't know, they crashed their car? You've been down this road, of course, with beverage alcohol. We don't know what this is going to look like. And in terms of R&D, what's your source going to be? What availability, what capacity, what's quality control look like here? And how do you police its use particularly relative to the age of diners. I get a great kick. I'm an admirer of the menu R&D folks at Carl's Jr. They're wonderfully zany. And here, this was an LTO, limited time offer. State of Colorado, they're Rocky Mountain High. I like the name. The CBD, wink, wink, in this case, Cheeseburger Delight. The CBD, by the way, was in that sort of secret sauce, that orange stuff that you see. But it leads me to my last point here, which is what's the impact on image? Because if you read the Facebook feeds after this item was introduced, you had moms saying, wait a minute, you expect me to take my child into this operation? It's not going to happen. So all of these questions and more will apply equally to both CBD, and THC. Let me say those initials again, CBD and THC, which is the hallucinogenic component of marijuana. Approval for use is growing on the West Coast as cannabis cafes have been licensed in municipalities, particularly in Southern California, and I'm not making this up, ladies and gentlemen. They are hiring bud tenders, and ganja sommeliers to help diners pair their farm-to-table marijuana with their menus. All right, refasten your seatbelts, everybody. We are going to have to watch this very, very carefully. Again, you know your own patron base and expectations. There will be legal pushback. So for all of you, yep, there may be opportunity, but I would urge you to proceed with caution as I move to finish. A quick recap. Here's what we reviewed. We took a look at health and healthful dining. We took a look at ethnic from 2 points of view, both Asian and Middle Eastern, and as a subset of that, we certainly took a look at vegetable or plant-based opportunities. Most all of you, research shows, adopt and adapt these ideas by means of LTOs, limited time offers, and specials. I hope that you have gotten some ideas that you can put to work, even if it is simply on a limited time basis. And always, 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 nothing that you have seen in the course of this presentation is prescriptive. What works for you depends entirely on the nature of your operation, your customer base. But as always, I have got to thank you and salute you. I have talked now for 45, 46 minutes with straightforward, unadulterated, creative examples that you manage to innovate around year in and year out, no matter what the challenge is. I have the best job in the world. I am privileged to work with you and for you, and I salute you and thank you. I thank you for joining the webinar. Now, Marlea, I believe we're going to go back to you. Do we have any questions from any of our audience?
Yes, thank you, Nancy. So we have about 10 minutes left for Q&A, and just a reminder to you all on the phone right now, you may type questions at any time using the questions window in your GoToWebinar screen. We'll start off with one question that we have. Beyond kid menus and CBD, what do you kind of see as the next big thing on the rise post that?
I suspect that it will take us back into the vegetable category. Not precisely sure what it might be. I would keep an eye on herbs. You know, you operators did a great job when we really got into the thicket of low sodium and so on, and there were clashing opinions on what constituted health. As you started removing additives, specifically sodium, from your menus, you did a good job of adding flavor back in through herbs. Honestly, I don't think we've scratched the surface on that. And of course, you all know quite well that all of the great ethnic cuisines of the world not just Asian and Middle Eastern, but Latin American and West African, which is beginning to make a move here. They all rely heavily on herbs. So I put herbs on the radar under the general category of vegetable-based.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on from there, what are your top 3 meat substitute products available today?
Say that again, my top 3 unique substitute, meat substitute? What's meat? Okay. I don't know that I have 3, but let me start talking, and 2 of them are coming right into my mind. The first, of course, we've seen. It's mushrooms, and that is not news to any of you operators. Mushrooms have a great deal in common with meat. It's why you can slip them into a vegetable-based dish so readily as you slip the meat out. So I like mushrooms. I like squash, and I'm saying that not just because we're heading into squash season, but again, I think it is a product category that has been probably a little bit underutilized, right? I mean, good grief, if it weren't for pumpkin spiced everything, which has been a wonderful entree to get your customers thinking about pumpkins and squash. I think that there's a kind of a natural opportunity there. And then I guess if you pushed me to name a third one, I'd suggest that we all keep our eyes on ethnic items coming out now, particularly from the Middle East. I talked chapter and verse on the subject of chickpeas, but I suspect that there are other items there that are every bit as customer friendly from the vegetable point of view that have been underexposed here. And so I would give a shout out to that as an area of opportunity as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Moving on to the idea of pricing, what type of pricing strategies would you recommend for healthy options? Should it be as a standalone menu or just add-on substitutions?
Well, that's a tough one to answer because it really is going to be driven by your customers, your patrons, their expectations. Certainly recent experience shows, and if you're near a Burger King, take a look at their pricing on their Impossible Burger. There is some customer price tolerance here. You can price up to a certain extent, but you all know quite well that as the price goes up, so does the expectation. And so it would seem to me that if you're looking at pricing not on one of the Beyond or the Impossible, not one of those meat patties, but perhaps something that you're doing in-house, a better for you vegetable-based dish, you may very well be able to upcharge, but now it's going to depend on the menu merchandising. You're going to have to sell the customer on why this dish commands more, because you're doing it at home, in the kitchen with locally grown, if that's appropriate, seasonal, if that's appropriate, it's environmentally kind. Build the story around it, and that will allow you to test at a higher price point.
Awesome, thank you, Nancy. In your opinion, is Hispanic cuisine trend, is it going down? Do you see it slowing at all?
Which cuisine trend?
Hispanic.
Oh, Hispanic. Oh gosh, it's certainly not going away. My suspicion is that at some point in the near term, for Hispanic cuisines, Latinx, if you like, in general, and then specific national cuisines under that umbrella, whether it's Colombian, whether it's Mexican, we will see emerge a generation, let me take you back to my earlier comments, of a telegenic, young, passionate chef influencers who will capture sort of the customer's attention and their imagination with the culinary story they have to tell. We have really, I know I don't have to say this, but in this country, we have only barely scratched the surface of Hispanic cuisines. And certainly, if you look across to the other side of the water, to the Iberian Peninsula, Portugal is the hot dining destination of choice, and I'm seeing lots of noise around Portuguese items as well. So there's lots and lots of upside. It's got nowhere to go but up from my point of view.
Great, thank you. Related to the CBD topic that you mentioned, does CBD attract millennials, or is the interest across all demographics?
Yes. The answer is yes. As far as we know at this point, and again, I've got to give you the caveat here, we're not seeing a lot of solid research coming out of this, but it seems to be attractive across demographic categories, because remember, CBD is seen as a relaxant, so that would have broad appeal. CBD used in medications and salves and pain reduction is gaining purchase, and that would have broad-based appeal. Not much research to back this up, but there are claims that it helps with arthritis treatments, for example. Well, that suggests a more mature audience, but overworked and over-scheduled millennials could use a little relaxation, so it appeals to them as well. I think there's very broadly based appeal. Again, the question is, to whom does it appeal? The question is, how much and under what circumstances should you be using it on your menus?
Great, thank you. Moving on to kind of the non-com industry, do you feel that the college dining services are setting the trends for the younger diners?
Oh, without question. For all of you on this call, if you really want to get a sense of what's on the horizon, run, don't walk. Run, don't walk to your nearest campus. Because, of course, on a 24/7 basis, campus food service directors have to feed the next generation. If you're a restaurateur, they're feeding tomorrow's generation today. And they are also highly activist. They are very, very trend receptive and responsive, and they really set the bar. The diners set the bar very, very high in terms of expectations. It requires a lot of creativity, flexibility. I think some of the best, and I've said this many, many times, I think some of the very best work being done from the menu R&D perspective is occurring on campuses. So by all means, do check that out.
Great, thank you. So we have time for a few more questions. Just a reminder, if we don't get to your question today, we will follow up via email. So Nancy, do you have any opinion on the emergence and or popularity of exotic proteins on the menu? For example, bison or ostrich?
You know, those are niche items, and I suspect that they will remain niche items. You can certainly tell a good story on behalf of, let's say, bison as a lean but tasty protein alternative. But, you know, you run into ongoing issues relative to, first of all, source of supply and adequacy of supply. You frequently run into problems in terms of cooking and handling in the back of the house because they're lower fat products. But I think the bigger issue is customer interest and demand. I'm not seeing it, and I think, frankly, it has been sidetracked by plant-based alternatives. Now, if you are an independent operator, and in certain parts of the country, you're going to have a great deal of interest in, let's say, bison. Venison is another one, and go for it. But on a broad mass market basis, I don't see that as a major trend anytime soon.
Okay, great. And for our last question today, would you say that millennial parents are more savvy diners? Are they interested in different kids' menu options outside of the typical chicken tenders?
Well, you know, I'm 2 minutes from a clean getaway here, and you have asked a really tricky question. I believe we're seeing a bit of a disconnect between what millennial parents say they expect and then what they do when they are on premise. There's no question that millennial parents are much more likely to say they are interested in local, seasonal, organic, perhaps, GMO-free. All of those major dietary hot buttons are getting full-throated support from millennial parents. However, once they are on premise with their children, they're going to need to give the child something that will immediately be embraced and short-circuit any meltdowns. So my advice would be, don't get rid of your chicken nuggets. If that's what children like, give them what they want. Don't get rid of the French fries. But again, reassure the parents on the basis of whatever good food story you can build into what is already a kid-attractive item.
Great, thank you, Nancy. Thank you again to our speaker, Nancy Cruz, for sharing her insights on menu trends for 2020 and beyond. And thank you to everyone for being in attendance. If you are interested in more content like this, please head over to our show website, nationalrestaurantshow.com, to check out our downloadable presentations and session recordings from the 2019 show. We also have another webinar coming up. October 23rd, we will have Donnie Medea from One Off Hospitality Group and Kevin Bam from Boca Restaurant Group discussing what chains can learn from independence. So a lot of great resources available that you can tap into. So keep a lookout for registration details to come. Thank you all for joining us and have a wonderful day.